Hey guys, welcome to ninth grade biology, and today we're gonna go over full course overview with me, and my name is Peter. I'll be your instructor today. So there are 7 units we're gonna cover today. First, the nature of life. Second, cell structure and functions. Third, genetics and heredity. Fourth is the evolution. Fifth, ecosystem environment. Sixth is human physiology and health. And at last, we're gonna go over briefly about plant biology. So first, unit one, what is life? So in order to have life, you have to have 7 key characteristics. First, it has to be made of cells, except some types of viruses in which it can be transcribed without cells directly to your body. Second, you need energy and nutrients. Third, you need to perform respiration. Fourth, you need to respond to a stimuli. Fifth, you need to grow, develop, and reproduce. Sixth, you have to have genetic material, and we're gonna discuss that greater in detail later in this chapter. And seven, you have to maintain homeostasis, which basically means you have to maintain health. Unit 2 is the cell types and structure. So there's 2 types of major cells that we have. Is first you have the prokaryote cells and you have the eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells doesn't have a nucleus. It's single main membrane-bound organelles and is smaller than your average eukaryotic cells. A good example will be bacteria. And eukaryotic cells has a nucleus. It has membrane-bound organelles. It's basically larger by a great margin than the prokaryotic cells. Some key examples include plants, animals, and fungi. And all the cells in the human body are prokaryotic cells, except some of the biotics and some of the viruses that we have. So the key organelle functions in which we're going to briefly talk about these 4 on the PowerPoint here. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, produces energy, which is ATP through cellular respiration. Chloroplast is the equivalent of a mitochondria in the plant, which is only found in plants and performs photosynthesis, which is the opposite of cellular respiration to make glucose. Nucleus is the control centers and stores the genetic material and DNA in the cell and regulates all the cell activities. A cell membrane, which is a semi-permeable barrier, controls what enters and exits the cell and protects the cell and the functions within from the bigger part of the body. And the unit 3, we're going to talk about genetics and heredity. The key concepts here are DNA, which is a genetic material that carries instructions to copy itself. Genes are segments of the DNA that codes for traits. Alleles are different forms of a gene. For example, you can have curly hair, you can have blonde hair instead of black hair. And dominant and recessive gene determines what gets passed on to the next generation. A genotype is the genetic makeup you have in your genes, and a phenotype is the physical appearances of the trait. For example, you can carry both blonde and black hair in your gene, which is the genotype, but you can only express black or blonde hair, which is the phenotype that you physically express. And the Punnett square, which is a tool to predict what trait inheritance, can predict the genotype and the phenotype you get. A capitalized letter represents the dominant gene, and a recessive letter represents by a non-capital letter. And dominant genes are what are expressed in your phenotype that you have on your body, and the recessive gene is what you don't express on your body and it's not part of your phenotype, but it can get passed down to the next generation if you have both the recessive alleles. So Mendel is sort of the founder of, or the pioneer of genetics inheritance. He developed the Punnett square, and there's 3 major laws that we have to remember for this unit. First is the law of dominance. When a dominant and recessive alleles are present, the dominant trait will be expressed in the phenotype, which is the capital letter in the Punnett square. The law of segregation is that during gamete formation, the 2 alleles for each trait separate, so the gamete carries only 1 allele for each gene. And the law of independent assortment, which states that genes for different traits segregate independently during gamete formation, leading to genetic variation. A gamete, which is a sexual reproduction cell, only contains half of your DNA, and each of your parent contribute half of your DNA, which completes your 46 chromosomes during gamete formation. Unit 4, we're going to talk about evolution, and Darwin is the pioneer of this field. His theory of natural selection basically starts the whole idea of evolution, and it basically just says that he basically just says that more offsprings are produced that then can survive and produce and sustained by the environment, and individuals within a population have different traits. Traits that improve survival and reproduction are favored, and favorable traits become more common over generations, and the unfavorable one gradually decline. And variation is random, in which it's formed during gamete formation. Selection is not random, so because the favorable traits will survive and the non-favorable one will die out within faster than you think. And the evidence for evolution includes fossil records which show transitional species and the gradual transition among species and animals over the centuries. Comparative anatomy also shows evolution occurs by looking at homologous structures, which is the structure that different animals express, but it's similar, which means we have a common ancestor. And the DNA and protein sequences, which can show the genetic similarities, one of the key evidence that we can use for evolution. Embryology also shows some evidence for evolution, as developmental stage in animals show similar patterns, and observed evolution, which includes antibiotic resistance, pepper moths, is a good example, as some of the key resistance gets passed on to the next generation. And so this is a brief timeline about evolution that occurs. So 4.6 billion years ago, Earth forms, and 3.5 billion years ago, the first prokaryotic life appears, and then 2 billion years after that, we have the eukaryotic cells, which is a lot more complex. So you can see how long it takes for a single prokaryotic cells to develop membrane-bound organelles. And then approximately 500 million years ago, we have the Cambrian explosion, in which complex multicellular life were formed. And 360 million years ago, we have the first land vertebrates called tetrapods that officially begins the life on Earth. And 230 million years ago, dinosaurs appeared. And 65 million years ago, dinosaurs went all extinct. Only mammals survive and diversify. The first Homo sapien species appeared around 2 million years ago, which is the ancestor of our human. So next, we're going to talk about ecosystem ecology, which is very important in biology, in which we look at a lot of organisms in the nature as a whole. So some of the key ecosystem structure include abiotic factors, which includes non-living components like the water, light, temperature, and soil. Biotic factors are what we call living components, in which plants, animal, microorganisms, viruses are all the biotic factors we found in nature. Producers are autotroph, which then make their own foods like plants, algae, and basically all the plants we see. They make their own foods, and in which consumers called heterotrophs eat. Some eat autotrophs only, and others eat other heterotrophs, which are herbivores that eat only plants and carnivores that eat only meats. And decomposers is very important as well, as it break down dead organic matter such as fungi and bacteria. The 10% rule is very important, which states that only 10% of the energy transfer between the trophic levels. So if we have 100% of the producers, there's only 10% of the primary consumer and 1% of the secondary consumers, and only 0.1% of the tertiary consumers, which are the apex predators. They have the least energy and make up the least of the entire ecosystem. A food web, which basically shows the ecosystem relationship on the map. You can see the arrows represent who consumes what for energy. And there's several ecological relationships we have to look at. First, we have the predation, which in which one organism kills and eats another. Competition is in which organisms fight for limited resources. Mutualism is both species benefit from one relationship. Commensalism is one benefits, the other is unaffected. Parasitism is one benefits and the other one is harm, which is most frequently seen in parasites. Uh, Next, we have to talk about human physiology and health. There are six main systems in the human body, which includes circulatory, which transports oxygen and nutrients and waste, and includes the heart, blood vessels, and blood. The respiratory system function as the gas exchange, in which it takes in oxygen and removes the carbon dioxide. That includes the lung, trachea, and diaphragm, in which all the cellular respiration perform. Digestive system is what breaks down the food and absorbs nutrients, which includes the stomach, intestines, and liver. The nervous system is what controls body activities and responds to stimuli. That includes the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The immune system is very important defense against pathogens and diseases. That includes white blood cells, antibodies. And the endocrine system produces hormones that regulate growth, metabolism, and reproduction. The human reproduction and adolescence system and stage is very important. The reproductive system of human, which includes the testes in male that produce sperm and testosterone. In female, the ovaries produce eggs and estrogen and progesterone. Fertilization includes the sperm and egg to form a zygote in a fallopian tube after the ovary. The developmental stage, which is typically 9 months, happens in the uterus, and the cell develop from the zygote to an embryo to a fetus in around 9 months to 10. Adolescence, in which is puberty, is triggered by hormone releases that triggers growth spurt, secondary sex characteristics, and the physical changes includes height gain, body hair, voice changes, reproductive maturity. Health during adolescent stage is very important. You have to include balanced nutrition, regular exercise, and mental health awareness. Disease prevention and immunity is also important among the human physiology. There's two types of diseases mainly. There's the infectious diseases, which is caused by pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites that can spread between people. That includes flu, COVID-19, tuberculosis. Non-infection diseases are not caused by pathogens and cannot spread. It's caused by genetics, lifestyle, environment includes diabetes, cancer, and heart diseases, which you cannot typically spread among people. And the immune system has different functioning and ways to promote defense. There's first is the innate immunity, which you acquire by birth. It is the general non-specific defense, which includes your mucus, your skin, the inflammation processes. The adaptive immunity includes specific develops after exposure, such as antibody and memory cells, in which you develop after exposure to viruses. Vaccination is what induces adaptive immunity. It's artificial and trains the immune system to fight specific pathogens and produce the memory cells and antibodies required to fight against these viruses. At last, we're going to talk about plant structure and functioning. So the plant has a key organ systems include roots, which is most important, that anchors the plant, absorbs water and minerals, and stores the food for the plants. The stem supports the plant and transport the material between the roots and leaves. The leaves are the main sites for photosynthesis, in which gas exchange through the stomata. And flowers are the reproductive organs for plants and produces seeds and fruits. The equation for photosynthesis, which we typically discuss, is 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water plus light will produce glucose and oxygen. This happens in the chloroplast cells and produces glucose and oxygen. Respiration breaks down glucose for energy, and that occurs in mitochondria in human. But mitochondria also is presented within plants, in which plants, some of the plants does respiration at night without the presence of light, so they have an energy source at night as well. Transpiration is the water loss through the leaves, which pulls the water out from the roots. And the plant reproduction and growth is different from human and animals. So there's two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction, in which the offspring are genetically identical to parent. The methods includes cutting, grafting, runners, and binary fission, which is you can see it in bacteria and also some of the plants. Sexual reproduction, which occurs in the flowering plants, includes two steps: the pollination, in which the pollen, the male, reaches the stigma of the female, which induces fertilization. The pollen and the egg form the seed in the ovary of the plant. The ovary develops into the fruit, protects and disperses the seeds, and eventually grows to another plant. In the whole process, the cycle goes on. Germination, which is basically fertilization in plants, requires suitable temperature, water, oxygen, and proper light conditions in some species in order for photosynthesis to occur properly. Some of the key takeaway we discussed today is that biology is the study of life and all living organisms, from cells to ecosystems. All life shares common characteristics such as cell, energy use, reproduction, homeostasis, which suggests that we all have a common ancestor. And the Darwin theory of evolution also stands. The evolution by natural selection explains the diversity and the unity of life. Biological systems are all interconnected. Changes in one part affect the whole system. And you have to apply biological knowledge to make informed decisions about health, environment, and society, which is the ultimate goal if you want to study biology. And thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. And this is all I have for you guys today. Thanks.